let's say you find yourself at a party this weekend or a social gathering. Most likely, you're going to be engaged in about three conversations. One of these is going to happen: sports, politics, religion. And for that reason, the guy that I would most want to have with me at that party is our guest today. He's got a Super Bowl ring. He scored a lot of touchdowns with Tom Brady in the New England Patriots. He played for the Saints. He played for the Browns. He's a college football analyst with ESPN on the SEC network. He's an advocate for the unborn and for biblical justice. And he has a brand new podcast called The Just Life, dealing with lots of topics, including the ones that I just mentioned. Benjamin Watson, I don't know how you have time to join us today, but I'm so glad that you're here with us on the CBN Sports Podcast.
Well, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that new podcast, The Just Life? What is it all about?
Of course. Well, The Just Life is the name of my new podcast. Really excited about its release. And basically, a lot of times we react to injustice in our culture and really around the world. We have a visceral reaction to that because God has put in all of us this idea of fairness and equity. And as we look throughout scripture, I've been reading through the Bible again every year. I go through the scripture, and I'm always impressed by just how many times God talks about justice. He talks about righteousness and justice being the foundation of his throne in the book of Psalms. He talks about justice in the book of Amos. And Micah 6:8, a very famous verse that many of us know. He has told you, oh man, what is good. What is the Lord required of you, but to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God. And so whether it's in the book of Isaiah or whether in the book of James, there's this thread of justice and righteousness throughout scripture. And so I thought to myself, man, God cares about this. We should care about it. And especially as believers, our lives should be characterized by justice. Now, what is justice? Because everybody has their own type of justice, and sometimes it rubs us the wrong way. But if we look through scripture, justice is really two things. It's protecting those who deserve protection and punishing those who deserve punishment. And it's also this idea of dealing equitably or with fairness with people in everyday life. And when you see those words in scripture, it's almost like if we were to, as individuals and collectively as a nation, as world governments, if we were to treat people and people groups correctly and fairly in everyday life, we wouldn't need the sort of reparative or restorative or really punitive justice that we see in protecting or punishing people. And so my hope with the podcast was to engage with people who are change makers, who are making a difference on different justice issues, to perhaps expose issues of injustice that we hadn't thought about, or maybe just weren't aware of. And also just to encourage all of us that, we don't have to be attorneys, although I interview some attorneys, we don't have to be professionals in this realm, really to be mothers and fathers and husbands and wives and everyday workers who have a heart for people and a heart for justice and who advocate for it in our own way.
Man, that's a great answer. I know when you engage with people in conversation, you could ask 10 different people what their definition of justice is, and you may get 10 completely different answers. And so it's tough when you come with it from a biblical worldview, which you do. So then you get into this whole dynamic of politics and religion, and where do you separate that? And even thinking about the history of politics and sports, I think of the 1936 Olympics in Berlin when Jesse Owens made such a profound statement by his achievement with Hitler in the stands looking on. More recently, I mean, we can think about a million examples. And one example that just happened just within the last month was President Donald Trump's talking about getting involved potentially by putting pressure on the Washington Commanders, maybe to change their name back to the Redskins. What's your take on that?
Man, my honest take is I don't think that that's something the president wants to delve into. Honestly, the Redskins the Commanders are formerly the Redskins, are a privately owned, company, and they can name their company whatever they want to, whether we like it or not. I think the larger conversation there, you mentioned the power of sports. And I do think that there's a power of sports when it comes to engaging in policy and promoting justice. Sports many times is on the forefront of so many justice movements. And I think part of it is kind of the meritocracy that we see within sports. And also the fact that inside these walls, inside these locker rooms, players engage with each other on a more human basis, probably than we see in the general public. Like we're able to sweat with each other and understand each other and know each other. But we also see sports as kind of leading the way when it comes to things that we wouldn't agree with as believers and some things that we would. I've thought about, as somebody who grew up in Virginia, who's grew up, that was our pro team. Our pro team was at that point the Redskins for many people, although I was never a Redskins fan. Our team was the Redskins where I lived. And I always thought to myself, what's the history of this name? What is the connotation with which it was adopted? What's the history of the country in which it was adopted as it pertains to indigenous people? And people will come at this from a whole bunch of different ways, and we have to respect that. But I think the fact remains that the name change was way overdue. And it really happened primarily, I think, because of sponsorships and money, which unfortunately, circling back to the conversation about justice, many times justice or fairness or equality or respect for people doesn't necessarily happen unless there is a monetary incentive to do so. So the president being involved, the president of the United States has been involved in a lot of things that I don't agree with, quite frankly. But I do think that the Commanders have, every right to have whatever name they want. And I also think that them changing the name to the Commanders was the right thing to do, not just because of the economics of it, but because in this country, that terminology is just not becoming of where we're trying to go.
Mm. Well, there are times when it is necessary for politicians to get involved in sports. One of those examples is when biological males are competing against females. And I know this is a loaded question, but where do you see this whole thing going?
Well, I think the very first thing we have to understand is that there are politics at play. No matter where you fall on the spectrum, so many of these cultural conversations that turn into bonfires have political ramifications, or really political angles, I should say. The fact of the matter is this is a very small amount. The truth of the matter is that this is a very small amount of athletes that are identifying as male and competing against females. Doesn't mean it's not problematic, but we have to take a look back and see, with all the headlines, all the incendiary comments, what's the actual truth. Now that we understand the actual numbers, it's important to protect female sports. It's not just because I have daughters who play sports. It's not just because God created male and female differently with different capabilities, as we know. There's a precedent being set here. And what we see so often is that if a precedent is being set at the highest level, is going to trickle down to the lower levels. And so this is a battle worth fighting. I do think that even within that, there's a certain level of respect that we should have for people. There's a certain way that we should speak about people, even if we disagree with the fact that a biological male is swimming against biological females, as horrible as that may be. We should speak about those people with a certain level of human dignity.
Absolutely.
While still upholding the fact that there should be separation there, just for matters of fairness and matters of equity and matters of biology.
What's amazing to me, as we shift gears just a little bit, is how much college sports have changed in 20 years. Think about it. Since you were playing at the University of Georgia, even before that, when you were playing at Duke and you thought about transferring from Duke to Georgia, now the transfer portal, and now we've got NIL. We're 4 years into name, image, and likeness. It's still the Wild West in college sports. Congress recently revealed plans to produce a bill that essentially gives the student athletes, kind of makes it a bill of rights for them. What are your thoughts? And again, this is another loaded one with a lot of ways it could go. What are your thoughts about amateurism, NIL, and kind of the new face of college sports?
NIL, or name, image, and likeness, for those who don't know, was long overdue. This could have been dealt with 20 years, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, if the NCAA was willing and able to do that. They kicked the can down the road. And so we're in the situation where we are now, where we're trying to catch up. We're trying to provide guardrails. We're trying to protect student athletes against vultures who are trying to take advantage of them, while still allowing them to engage in what every American would want to, which would be to be compensated fairly for your name, your image, and your likeness. And so the idea is positive. I love the fact that athletes are being compensated. The recent House settlement is going to set some sort of kind of salary cap where schools can spend a certain amount. They can actually pay their players directly instead of simply having the collectives, the NIL collectives. But I don't think that we are at the end of this. I think this is an ongoing fluid conversation. It would not surprise me if at some point college athletes, much like pro athletes, were able to unionize, collectively bargain.
Which would essentially make them employees. Is that right?
Exactly. You're exactly. That's where I was going. Making them employees, where they have to negotiate working conditions, much like we did in the NFL. I don't see that as being too far-fetched as rapidly as things have changed. But at the core of the matter, I have friends, neighbors whose children are excellent athletes and who are going through this process even in high school. And so the desire, I think, for all of us is for them to be treated fairly, to be cared for, and not be taken advantage of, while still be able to enjoy, the fruits of their labor in a place where, for better or for worse, the capitalistic society, we're able to be compensated for the revenue that we bring to these institutions.
Exactly. You think of the billions of dollars that college sports brings in. It continues to grow, but I mean, it's been happening. Like you mentioned, it should have happened 20 years ago. And just thinking about college athletes who bring so much value and so much equity to these universities and getting a scholarship. And of course, getting an education is great. But come on, there's no other arena in the world in which organizations make that much money, and the people that they're doing it on the backs of they're not getting compensated at all, not even for their name, image, and likeness. So I'm with you. I think it's a great thing, but there's some ironing out that needs to happen over the next few years, and I'm sure, hopefully we will get to that. Now, I know talking about NIL is not necessarily the most fun thing. So let's have a little bit of fun. And I know that you can't make predictions because you do that on SEC, on ESPN's SEC network. So let me give you a couple of scenarios. There are two teams in the top 5 from the SEC. It's been 20 years since the Texas Longhorns have won a national championship. Give me the case for the Texas Longhorns, not just winning the SEC, but hoisting the trophy down in Miami in January.
Well, I think there's a great case. I think if you're a Texas fan, you are very excited at this point. The first time you've been preseason number 1, which I don't know, is that a curse? Is that a blessing? We shall see. But I think we'll learn a lot within the next 14 days. I mean, Texas goes on the road to Columbus to play Ohio State, team that won the national championship last year, a team that is loaded when it comes to a talent perspective. I think this is the premier game in week 1. And we're going to learn a lot about Texas. We're going to learn a lot about Arch Manning. We're going to learn a lot about the fortitude of this team that Sarkisian has built. But I'm really high on Texas. I think that, when you look at them on paper, they have not many question marks. They're solid on defense. I'd say the biggest question mark, offensive line perhaps, but also quarterback. We have a small sample size from Arch Manning. Now, all signs point to greatness, for sure. And all DNA points to greatness, for sure. but we don't have a large sample size, so that will remain to be seen. But I think a lot of answers will come in a few days when they get to Columbus.
It does seem like they have so many pieces in that puzzle to just make a tremendous team this year. And how good does Arch Manning have to be even to lead them to a national championship?
Well, I think he's got to limit turnovers, all those things. He just got to be himself. I think what's under emphasized with him is perhaps his mobility. He's an athlete. He can run. That puts a lot of pressure on the defense. And you saw it at times last year when he was able to play. he's a guy who can obviously beat you with his arm, but you better have somebody that can spy him and can catch him because he can hurt you with his legs. And so he simply has to do what he's been doing. I think you look over the last year of what Sarkisian has done between him and Quinn Ewers, the way that he was able to facilitate trust in that quarterback room with the star that was brewing in Arch Manning. I think that bodes well for the confidence that Arch is going to have moving forward. And then it's just a matter of his running backs, Contrivion Wisner, and his wide receivers stepping up and making plays for him.
Certainly exciting times for Texas, man. They've got, like you mentioned, a big game with Ohio State to start the season. I can't wait for the season to get kicked off. We're in week 0 coming up this week, but it really gets going the following week. But you are a former Georgia Bulldog, so let's make the case for Georgia. With Kirby Smart replacing Carson Beck, what do they have to do to win their 5th national championship?
Well, Georgia has been, 4 straight, I believe, SEC championship appearances. And so the big question mark for Georgia is much like Texas in the fact that they have a new starting quarterback. Gunnar Stockton is going to be the starter. We have a small sample size on Gunnar Stockton. He came in relief work in the SEC championship, helped win that football game. The game against Notre Dame was tough for him, but had a lot of extenuating circumstances. And so Georgia is good when Georgia's able to run the football, which they didn't do super well last year for their standards, and also play good defense on the defensive line. And so I had a chance to go and see them not too long ago. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of excitement, positivity, as we see around the SEC and around the country at this point in time. Everybody thinks they're going to win at this point. But for Georgia, it's establishing the run game. It's the quarterback play. It's playing great defense. And it's doing the things that they were able to do last year to get them to the SEC championship. And now that daunting schedule that they had to get a lot of those teams at home. They get Alabama at home. They get Ole Miss at home. They get Texas at home. And so they've got to be happy about that, because really when it comes to college football, a lot of this is about how good you are, but it's also about your road to get to championships. Those roads need to come through home field advantage, and Georgia's going to have that in a lot of these games.
It does not get easy. It's not at all easy in the SEC. The other conferences as well, but we've seen it. It is so difficult to get to that SEC championship game, and if you can even survive that, to get on to that next level, to get to the playoffs, which again, year 2 of the playoffs, it's exciting. I can't wait for it. I'm so looking forward to the season. I know it's going to be a good one, but if you're a sports fan, if you care about justice, if you enjoy listening to intelligent conversation, if you want to be the smartest guy at the party, trust me, Mr. Watson can give you some inside info. So you're going to want to tune into the Just Life podcast. It drops September the 2nd. You can find it anywhere that you get your podcast. Benjamin Watson, thanks so much for your time. Let's circle back at some point during the season to talk more football.
I love to. Thanks for talking about the Just Life as well. And also want to mention YouTube, too, is a place where we'll be living. This is a video podcast. And so
awesome.
My crew did a great job making a fantastic set. So I love for people to see just the awesome graphics that we're going to have. So thank you for the time. I look forward to talking about football later on.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you.